The Forgotten Outpost. The skies above Nexus 7 never cleared. Perpetual storms of caustic yellow clouds churned overhead, occasionally breaking to reveal 3 pale moons hanging like watchful eyes. Below this oppressive ceiling, thousands of beings toiled in the vast quarries and refineries that covered half the small planetoid. They represented dozens of species from across the galactic arm, but they shared one thing in common. They were all slaves of the Kral Empire. Tarek wiped acidic sweat from his brow as he recalibrated the drilling rig for the 5th time that day. His half-human physiology struggled with Nexus 7's atmosphere, but his lungs were strong enough to survive without the respirators that many other species required. The Kral valued this resilience, which was why they hadn't killed him yet. Technician, the Eastern Sector drill is faltering again. The Overseer's voice grated through Tarek's comm implant. Fix it immediately, or face reduction. Reduction. The Kral's favorite euphemism for having one's rations cut until starvation set in. Tarek had seen it happen too many times. Acknowledged, he replied flatly, gathering his tools. As he trudged across the quarry floor, the massive form of a Kral enforcer loomed before him, blocking his path. "You're slow today, half-breed," the enforcer growled, mandibles clicking in what passed for amusement among the insectoid Kral. "Perhaps you need motivation." Tarek kept his eyes down. "The Eastern drill requires immediate attention, enforcer. Delay will impact today's quotas." The Kral hissed but stepped aside. "Quotas above all. Go." The Eastern Sector lay a kilometer away, and as Tarek walked, he passed hundreds of workers, Vordians with their 4 arms perfect for manual labor, crystalline fur who could withstand the most toxic environments, even a few Taurans whose massive strength made them valuable despite their rebellious tendencies. None made eye contact. Hope had died in this place long ago. The broken drill turned out to be worse than expected. The quantum bore had fractured, and caustic drilling fluid leaked everywhere. Tarek knew immediately that fixing this would take hours, perhaps all night. His shoulders slumped at the thought. Need help with that? Tarek flinched, turning to find Ilara, one of the few other half-humans on Nexus 7. Her violet eyes, inherited from her Illyrian mother, watched him with the faintest hint of warmth. "Ilara, you'll be missed at your station." She shrugged. "The purification system is automated for the next cycle. I have 20 minutes. Together they set to work, hands moving with practiced efficiency. They spoke little. Unnecessary talk attracted attention. But after several minutes, Ilara whispered, "Did you hear about Section 12? Tarek tensed. Section 12 had been the site of a small rebellion 2 days prior. A group of Taurans had refused work when one of their young collapsed from exhaustion. The Kral response had been immediate. "I heard," Tarek muttered. "All dead." "Not all," Ilara corrected, glancing around before continuing. "They took some for questioning. About Earth." Tarek's hands stilled. "Earth? Why would they ask about Earth?" The Kral intercepted a transmission from the outer rim. "Something's happening out there. Something that has them worried." Earth, the ancestral home neither of them had ever seen. To Tarek, Earth existed only in fragmented stories told by his human father before the Kral took him away. A blue world, teeming with life. A civilization that had once reached for the stars before the Kral and other empire builders had systematically isolated and contained them. "Earth is dead," Tarek said, repeating what they'd all been taught, or might as well be. Ilara's eyes flashed. "Then why are they asking questions? Why did Overseer Vask interrogate old Josen about human military capabilities?" Before Tarek could respond, a shadow fell across them. Enforcer Krell, flanked by 2 guards. "What is this? Unauthorized gathering." The Kral's compound eyes gleamed menacingly. Ilara stepped back. "Critical repair, Enforcer. I was providing assistance. Return to your station, female." The Kral gestured with a clawed appendage, and Ilara had no choice but to obey. As she departed, The enforcer turned to Tarek. "You. The commander wants specialized repairs in the communication hub." "Now." Tarek's stomach nodded. The communication hub was restricted to all but the highest-ranking slaves, and even then, access was limited and heavily monitored. Being summoned there could mean anything from a genuine need for his technical skills to a slow execution for some imagined offense. "The drill, enforcer, will be handled by others. Come." The communication hub was housed in a towering spire at the center of the Krall's administrative complex. As Tarek was marched through security checkpoints, he noted the unusual level of activity. Krall officers hurried through corridors, their chitinous armor clicking against the metal floors. Something had them agitated. Commander Vex was waiting, his massive form dominating the central platform of the hub. Unlike most Krall, whose exoskeletons ranged from muted browns to blacks, Vex's carapace shimmered with iridescent blues that signified his royal lineage. "This is the technician." Vex's voice rumbled from somewhere deep in his thorax. "Yes, Commander." The half-human with exceptional repair skills. Vex's mandibles twitched. "We have intercepted a signal on an ancient frequency. Our equipment cannot fully decode it. You will examine this device and determine its function." A guard placed a small battered object on the console. Tarek's breath caught. Though he had never seen one before, he recognized it immediately from his father's descriptions. A human emergency beacon, at least 50 years old. Where was this found? Tarek asked before he could stop himself. Commander Vex's compound eyes fixed on him. "That is not your concern, slave. Your concern is to make it functional, so we may determine if it poses a threat." Tarek's hands trembled slightly as he picked up the beacon. It was military grade, designed to withstand extreme conditions. The casing was scratched and dented, but the core components seemed intact. As he opened the outer shell, his fingertips brushed against an inscription. UES Prometheus. Never forgotten. The United Earth Space Force. His father had served before his capture. Had this come from a lost human vessel? A downed fighter? An escape pod? "Well?" Vex demanded. "It's an emergency locator," Tarek explained, choosing his words carefully. "Designed to broadcast distress signals on multiple frequencies." "Is it still transmitting?" Tarek examined the power core. "No, the battery is depleted." "Could it be restored?" Something in the commander's tone made Tarek pause. There was concern there, perhaps even fear. He looked up at the massive Krall, wondering what could possibly frighten such a creature. With the right components, yes. Vex's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. "You will repair it, then determine what signal it was broadcasting and to whom." For the next several hours, Tarek worked on the beacon under heavy guard. The Krall provided whatever tools and components he requested, which itself was unusual. Normally, slaves made do with whatever was available, often repairing equipment with salvaged parts. As he worked, he overheard fragments of conversation among the Krall officers, references to increased activity at the barrier, and unauthorized transmissions from Sector 17. Something had spooked the Empire, and it somehow related to humans. When the beacon was finally powered, Tarek connected it to the Krall diagnostic systems. The interface was incompatible, requiring him to create an adapter from spare parts. As the data began flowing, he carefully monitored both the beacon's output and the Krall command console. Then he saw his chance. While the Krall were distracted by a sudden alert from another sector, Tarek's fingers flew across the console. The beacon wasn't just receiving, it could still transmit. In those few seconds of inattention, he encoded a simple message into its emergency protocol. Coordinates of Nexus 7, followed by 4 words. "Humans here. Need help." He had no idea if the signal would reach anyone. The beacon's range was limited, and who knew if anyone still monitored such ancient frequencies. But it was something. A tiny act of defiance in a life defined by submission. The console beeped as the diagnostic completed, and Commander Vex returned his attention to Tarek. "Well, what have you discovered?" "The beacon was activated approximately 3 standard months ago," Tarek reported truthfully. "It was broadcasting standard distress protocols on Earth military channels, but there's no way to determine if anyone received the signal." Vex's massive head lowered until his face was level with Tarek's. "And if someone did?" Tarek swallowed. "Earth has been isolated for generations, Commander. Their technology is primitive compared to the Empire's. Even if they received it, they would have no way to respond, no way to reach this sector." The Krull commander studied him for a long moment, compound eyes unreadable. "For your sake, half-breed, I hope you are correct. Because if humans attempt to interfere with Imperial matters again, we will not show the mercy we did during the containment. This time, we will exterminate them completely." Tarek was returned to his quarters that night, expecting punishment for his deception. But none came. Instead, the work routine continued as always, though security throughout the complex increased. Additional Krull battlecruisers arrived in orbit, visible as brief flashes of light through the perpetual cloud cover. 2 weeks passed. Tarek had all but forgotten his desperate transmission when the ground beneath Nexus 7 began to tremble. At first, the workers assumed it was another drilling accident. Such incidents were common as the Krull pushed their equipment and slaves to extract ever more of the precious ore that powered their war machines. But the trembling continued, growing stronger. In the quarry, Tarek looked up from his repair work as alarms began blaring throughout the complex. The yellow clouds above suddenly lit up with flashes of brilliant white light, like lightning but far more intense. "What's happening?" someone shouted. A Krull overseer nearby was barking orders into his communicator, mandibles clicking frantically. Then he froze, staring upward as the clouds parted to reveal something that made Tarek's heart stop. The sky was full of ships, not the angular, chitinous vessels of the Krull, but sleek, dark craft that moved with incredible speed and precision. As they descended through the atmosphere, Tarek could make out insignias on their hulls, a stylized globe with stars rising behind it, the emblem of Earth. "Impossible," the Krull overseer hissed. "They cannot be here. The barrier." His words were cut short by a deafening roar as the first human ship screamed overhead, so low that Tarek could feel the heat of its engines. Weapons fire erupted from the Krull defense towers, but the human vessels weaved through it with impossible agility. All around the quarry, slaves were looking up, expressions ranging from terror to disbelief to something long forgotten on Nexus 7. Hope. Tarek stood frozen as the first drop pods slammed into the ground less than a kilometer away, throwing up geysers of dust and rock. The Krull were mobilizing, enforcers herding slaves into containment areas, while their soldiers rushed to defensive positions. They came. Ilara appeared at his side, violet eyes wide with wonder. "Tarek, they actually came." Before he could respond, a massive explosion rocked the complex as the Krull's main power generator erupted in flames. The security fields that had kept them all prisoners for so long flickered and died. And in that moment, as chaos erupted across Nexus 7, Tarek made a decision. He grabbed Ilara's hand and began running, not toward the shelters where slaves were being herded, but toward the descending human forces, toward freedom. Behind them, a Krull enforcer spotted their escape and raised his weapon. "Halt or die, slaves." Tarek pulled Ilara behind a drilling rig as energy bolts sizzled past them. They were exposed, with nowhere to hide. The enforcer advanced, weapon trained on them, mandibles spread in what passed for a Krull smile. "The commander will be pleased to have subjects for interrogation," the Krull hissed, reaching for Tarek. Then the enforcer's head exploded in a spray of chitin and fluid. As the massive body collapsed, Tarek looked up to see a figure standing atop the drilling rig, a human in dark armor, holding a still smoking rifle. "Are you injured?" the armored figure called down, voice slightly distorted by the helmet speakers. Tarek could only stare. An actual human soldier, not just human, but free and armed. And here. And no, he finally managed. The soldier nodded, then spoke into a communicator. Phoenix lead to command. We have survivors at extraction point 3. Multiple species including human hybrids. A response crackled through, too low for Tarek to hear. The soldier jumped down beside them with inhuman grace. Some kind of enhanced armor, Tarek realized. I'm Lieutenant Maya Chen, Earth Special Forces, the soldier said, removing her helmet to reveal a face with features similar to Tarek's own, though her skin was darker and her eyes a deep brown. And unless I'm mistaken, you're one of ours. Half, Tarek admitted. My father was human. I've never seen Earth. Lieutenant Chen's expression softened slightly. Well, you're about to. We're evacuating all prisoners who wish to leave. Why? Ilara asked, finding her voice. Why come for us now? After all these years? Chen's eyes hardened. Because we finally could. The Crawl thought they'd contained us, isolated Earth behind their barrier network. They were wrong. She gestured to the sky, where more human ships were emerging from the clouds. Humanity never stopped fighting, never stopped searching for our lost people. And now, we found you. All around them, the sounds of battle intensified as more human forces engaged the Crawl defenses. It was impossible, Tarek thought. The Empire had ruled unchallenged for centuries. Yet here they were, outnumbered, outgunned, but somehow winning. Come with me if you want off this rock, Chen said, extending a hand. Earth is calling its children home. Above them, through a break in the toxic clouds, Tarek caught a glimpse of something massive in orbit. Not a ship, but a station or perhaps a carrier of incredible size. Its hull gleamed silver in the light of Nexus 7's distant sun, and emblazoned across its side was a name in massive letters. Prometheus, the very ship named on the beacon he'd repaired. Tarek took Chen's offered hand, and for the first time in his life, he felt something beyond resignation or despair. As human dropships descended across the complex and the Crawl defenses crumbled beneath an onslaught they'd never prepared for, Tarek finally understood why the Empire had feared Earth all along. They had awakened something terrible. They had awakened humanity's wrath. Wrath of a sleeping giant. The world Tarek had known for his entire life collapsed around him in less than an hour. Lieutenant Chen led them through the chaos of Nexus 7's main complex, moving with practiced precision. Other human soldiers appeared and disappeared throughout the facility, their dark armor making them look like wraiths against the industrial backdrop. They weren't just fighting. They were executing a meticulously planned operation. This way, Chen directed, guiding them through a maintenance tunnel. Extraction point is 2 clicks north. The other slaves, Tarek said between breaths as they ran. There are thousands. Being evacuated as we speak, Chen replied without breaking stride. This isn't just a raid, it's a full liberation operation. They emerged into what had once been the ore processing center. The massive refineries that had crushed both rock and spirit for generations now stood silent, their Crawl operators either fled or dead. In their place, human medics tended to injured prisoners while others organized evacuation groups. How many planets are you hitting? Ilara asked, her voice hushed with awe. Chen's expression hardened. All of them. A deafening explosion rocked the complex as human forces breached the Crawl command center. Through the gaping hole in the wall, Tarek could see fighting in the distance, a desperate last stand by the remaining Crawl defenders. Command, this is Phoenix lead. Chen spoke into her comm. Extraction point secure, beginning civilian evacuation. As if summoned by her words, massive dropships descended from the swirling clouds, settling onto the wide processing floor with surprising gentleness for such large craft. Their ramps lowered, and human soldiers poured out to secure the perimeter. All non-combatants, prepare for evacuation. One of them called out, medical treatment available aboard ship. Food and water for all species. The gathered slaves, Hundreds from just this sector alone looked at each other in disbelief. Many had never known freedom. Some had been born into servitude on Nexus 7, knowing nothing but the cruel regime of the Crawl. "It's really happening," Ilara whispered, gripping Tarek's arm. "We're leaving." As the first groups began boarding the transports, a voice called out from behind them. "Tarek, Ilara." They turned to see Josen, the old maintenance supervisor, limping toward them. Blood streaked his gray hair, but his eyes were bright with an emotion Tarek had never seen in them before. "You're alive," Tarek said, relief washing through him. The old man had been a father figure to many of the half-humans on Nexus 7, sharing what little knowledge of Earth he possessed. "Takes more than a few Crawl to kill this old man." Josen grinned, then grew serious. "It was you, wasn't it? The signal that brought them here." Tarek hesitated, then nodded. "I found a beacon in the command center. I didn't think anyone would hear it." "Someone always hears," Lieutenant Chen interjected. "Earth never stopped listening for its people." Josen studied Chen with wonder. "You're so much like the humans I remember from my youth, before the containment." "The containment failed," Chen said simply. "It took us decades to break through their barrier network, but humanity doesn't accept cages. Not for ourselves, and not for our people scattered across the stars." Another explosion, closer this time, sent tremors through the floor. Chen's hand went to her weapon. "That's our cue. Everyone on the transports, now." As they hurried toward the nearest dropship, Tarek felt a strange reluctance. This place had been his prison, yet it was all he knew. What waited for him on Earth? Would he be accepted or viewed as an alien half-breed? Having second thoughts, Ilara asked softly beside him. "Just uncertain thoughts." She took his hand. "Whatever's out there has to be better than what's here." Before they could board, a massive shadow fell across the processing floor. Tarek looked up to see Commander Vex, his royal carapace scorched and cracked, standing atop a ruined refinery tower. The Crawl commander's compound eyes burned with hatred as he surveyed the evacuation. "Humans," Vex's voice boomed across the complex. "You dare invade Imperial territory. Your species was contained for a reason." Lieutenant Chen stepped forward, raising her voice to match the Crawl's. "The containment is broken, Commander. Earth is free, and we've come for our people. All our people." Vex's mandibles clicked furiously. "Then you will die with them." He raised a device in his clawed appendage, a detonator. Tarek realized with horror. "The reactors," he gasped. "He's going to overload the fusion reactors." Chen reacted instantly, raising her rifle, but Vex had already disappeared behind the tower. Alarms began blaring throughout the complex, a sound Tarek had never heard before. Facility purge initiated. An automated voice announced, "Core detonation in 10 minutes. Change of plans." Chen barked into her comm. "Emergency evacuation. All units pull back immediately." The orderly evacuation transformed into controlled chaos as soldiers hustled the remaining prisoners onto the transports. Tarek found himself separated from Ilara in the rush, pushed aboard a different dropship as the ramps began to close. "Wait," he shouted, trying to push back against the tide of bodies. "Ilara. She's on Transport 3. A soldier assured him, pulling him fully inside as the ship sealed. "She'll be fine." The dropship lifted off with a lurch, acceleration pushing Tarek back against the bulkhead. Through a small viewport, he watched as more transports rose from the doomed facility, racing against the imminent reactor detonation. "What about the remaining Crawl?" someone asked. "We offered them surrender," the soldier replied grimly. "They refused." As the ship punched through the yellow clouds, Tarek got his first clear view of space. Actual space, not just glimpses through the perpetual storm cover. And what he saw left him breathless. The skies above Nexus 7 were filled with warships. Hundreds of them, possibly thousands. Human vessels of varying sizes and configurations, from nimble fighters to massive dreadnoughts. Among them, he recognized the enormous carrier he glimpsed earlier, the Prometheus, its name blazing in lights against its silvery hull. And beyond the human fleet, in the distance, the unmistakable shapes of Krull battle cruisers, burning, shattered, or in full retreat. "That's impossible," Tarek murmured. "The Krull Empire has the largest fleet in the sector." A soldier beside him laughed, the sound muffled by his helmet. "Not anymore." The transport shuddered as it docked with one of the larger human vessels. As the ramp lowered, Tarek was hit with a wave of sensations. Clean air, free of the acrid chemicals that permeated Nexus 7. Soft lighting that didn't hurt his eyes. And most startlingly, the sound of voices speaking freely, without fear. Human crew members guided the refugees into processing areas where medics assessed injuries and distributed food and water. Tarek moved in a daze, accepting a thermal blanket and a container of water from a smiling young woman. "Welcome home," she said, before moving on to the next arrival. Home. The word felt foreign. Tarek. He turned to see Ilara pushing through the crowd, her face flushed with relief. Behind her followed Josen and several other half-humans from their sector. "I thought I'd lost you," she said, embracing him tightly. "Everyone made it out?" he asked over her shoulder. Josen nodded solemnly. "From our section, yes. Others?" He shook his head. "The Krull executed some before they could be evacuated. Their way of denying us our victory." A tremor ran through the ship, and the crowd fell silent. On a large display screen overhead, they could see Nexus 7 in the distance, and then a blinding flash as the reactors detonated. The planetoid seemed to crumple inward before exploding outward in a shockwave that dissipated harmlessly against the human fleet's shields. A collective sigh went through the gathered refugees. For many, it represented the destruction of the only home they'd ever known. For others, it was the fitting end to a place of suffering. "Your attention, please," a voice announced over the ship's comm system. "All rescued personnel, please proceed to Deck 7 for processing and assignment to quarters. Medical emergencies to Deck 4. The captain will address everyone at 1800 hours." As they moved through the ship, Tarek marveled at the technology around him. Everything was sleek, efficient, and advanced, far beyond what the Krull had used, despite their supposed technological superiority. "How is this possible?" he asked a passing crewman. The Krull said humans were primitive, contained behind barriers with obsolete technology. The crewman smiled grimly. They wanted to believe that. Made them feel safe. Truth is, the barriers only kept our ships out, not our communications. We've been gathering intelligence, developing countermeasures, and building this fleet for 50 years. The Krull thought they were watching us. We were studying them. Later, gathered in a massive hall with thousands of other rescued slaves, Tarek and the others watched as a tall, scarred human in a formal uniform took the stage. Admiral Helena Reyes, commander of the Liberation Fleet. "To our guests," she began, her voice carrying easily through the vast space. "Welcome aboard the United Earth Space Force carrier Prometheus. You are safe now. You are free now." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Many of you have never known Earth. Some of you aren't human at all. But that doesn't matter. You were enslaved, and we do not tolerate slavery. Not of humans, not of anyone." A murmur ran through the crowd. The Krull Empire believed they had contained humanity, isolated us behind their barrier network, cut us off from our colonies, and enslaved those they captured. They believed we would accept this state of affairs. Her expression hardened. They were wrong. On the massive screens behind her, images appeared, planets, stations, and facilities similar to Nexus 7, all under attack by human forces. The liberation wasn't just happening here. It was happening everywhere, simultaneously. For 50 years, we've been planning, building, and waiting for the moment to strike. Today, that moment came. As I speak, human forces are liberating every Krull slave world, mining facility, and prison camp in this sector. The containment is over. Humanity has returned to the stars. The hall erupted in cheers and weeping. Tarek felt Ilara's hand slip into his, squeezing tightly. "What happens now?" she whispered. Before he could answer, Lieutenant Chen appeared beside them, her armor removed, replaced with a standard uniform. "That depends on you," she said, having overheard the question. "Earth is open to all who wish to come, but we're also establishing free colonies on liberated worlds for those who want to build something new." "And the Crawl?" Josen asked. "They won't simply accept defeat." Chen's expression turned grim. "No, they won't. Which is why we hit them everywhere at once, targeted their shipyards, and destroyed their communication relays. They can't coordinate a counterattack." "You've been planning this for decades," Tarek realized. "Since before I was born," Chen confirmed. "My grandmother was one of the architects of the Liberation Plan. She didn't live to see it happen, but she never doubted it would." Over the next few days, as the fleet moved deeper into formerly Crawl territory, Tarek learned more about the home he'd never known. Earth wasn't just a planet. It was the center of a growing alliance of species who had also suffered under imperial powers like the Crawl. The humans hadn't just broken free. They'd formed alliances, shared technology, and built a coalition strong enough to challenge the old order. 1 week after the liberation of Nexus 7, Tarek found himself on the Prometheus's observation deck, staring out at the stars. The fleet had expanded, now joined by vessels from other species, former slaves or subjugated worlds taking advantage of the Crawl's sudden weakness to assert their own freedom. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Admiral Rice's voice came from behind him. Tarek turned, surprised to find the fleet commander standing alone, without guards or aides. "I've never seen stars like this," he admitted. "On Nexus 7, the clouds kept you from looking up," she finished. "That was by design. The Crawl and empires like them don't want their slaves gazing at the stars. Might give them ideas." Tarek studied the Admiral carefully. "Why did Earth wait so long? If you had this capability." "We didn't," Rice said simply. "Not at first. The containment nearly destroyed us. We had to rebuild, rediscover, reinvent. And we had to do it in secret, making the Crawl believe their barriers were working perfectly while we found ways through them." She moved to stand beside him at the viewport. "But more importantly, we had to be sure we could win decisively. A failed rebellion would have doomed not just Earth, but every human and half-human in Crawl territory. They would have been exterminated as a precaution." The weight of those words settled on Tarek. The Crawl would have done exactly that. "What will happen to people like me?" he asked finally. "Half-humans who've never seen Earth." Admiral Rice turned to face him fully. "Lieutenant Chen tells me you were the one who sent the signal, that you repaired the beacon and risked everything to call for help." Tarek nodded hesitantly. "Then you've already answered your own question. You acted to protect others, to seek freedom not just for yourself, but for everyone suffering under the Crawl. That's what humanity is at its best." She smiled slightly. "Your genetic makeup is irrelevant. You're one of us where it matters most." She tapped her chest over her heart. A call came through on her communicator, and she glanced at it briefly. "I'm needed on the bridge. But think about what I said, Tarek. And consider this. We need people who understand both worlds to help us build what comes next." After she left, Tarek remained at the viewport, watching as distant stars slowly shifted with the ship's movement. Somewhere out there was Earth, a place he'd only heard about in whispered stories. And somewhere out there, the remaining Crawl forces were regrouping, planning, perhaps already launching counterattacks. This wasn't over. The liberation was just the beginning. He felt a presence beside him, and turned to find Ilara, who had been assigned to the medical bay due to her experience with diverse physiologies. "I just finished treating a group from the eastern mines," she said. "Many of them had never received proper medical care in their lives." Her voice caught. "The things the Crawl did to them." Tarek put his arm around her shoulders. "It's over now." "Is it?" Her violet eyes met his. Admiral Reyes addressed the medical staff today. She said this was just the first phase, that we've awakened something that can't be put back to sleep. What did she mean? Lara gestured to the stars beyond the viewport. Other slave worlds. Other empires like the Crawl. Earth isn't just fighting for humans anymore. They're offering freedom to anyone who wants it. The implications were staggering. Not just a liberation, but a revolution. One that could spread across the galaxy, upending power structures that had stood for millennia. An alert sounded throughout the ship, and the observation deck's displays activated automatically. Admiral Reyes appeared, her expression solemn. Attention all personnel and guests. As expected, the Crawl Empire has declared total war against Earth and all its allies. Their high command has vowed to erase the human plague from the galaxy. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes hardened. They've dispatched their remaining battle fleets to Earth, believing our homeworld is now defenseless. She allowed herself a small, cold smile. They are mistaken. The display shifted to show a real-time transmission from the Sol system. Earth's orbital defenses, massive platforms bristling with weapons that made the Crawl's most fearsome battleships look like toys, stood ready. Behind them, an armada even larger than the Liberation fleet waited in perfect formation. The Crawl never understood humanity, Admiral Reyes continued. They thought isolating us would weaken us. Instead, it gave us time to prepare, time to build, time to plan for this very day. The transmission showed the first wave of Crawl warships emerging from hyperspace and immediately encountering a wall of devastating firepower. The battle was shockingly brief, the superior human technology cutting through Crawl shields like they weren't even there. We sent only a third of our fleet for the Liberation, Reyes explained. The rest remained to protect Earth, knowing this counterattack would come. As the transmission ended, she addressed the ship directly. To those of you who were enslaved, I promise you this, you will never wear chains again. And to those who put those chains on you, her voice hardened, humanity has returned to the stars. And we have not forgotten. We have not forgiven. The communication ended, leaving the observation deck in silence. It's really over, Lara whispered. They can't win. Tarek watched the stars, thinking of all the other worlds like Nexus 7, all the other slaves looking up at alien skies and wondering if anyone would ever come for them. No, he said quietly. It's just beginning. 3 days later, Tarek stood in a recruitment office aboard the Prometheus. The officer behind the desk, a woman with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much, reviewed his application. You want to join Earth's forces? She asked, looking up at him. You understand that means fighting, not just rebuilding. I understand, Tarek said firmly. The Crawl aren't the only slavers in the galaxy. There are others out there, others like me, waiting for someone to come. The officer studied him for a moment, then nodded. Lieutenant Chen spoke highly of you, said you had the courage to send a signal when everyone else had given up hope. She stamped his application. Report to Training Deck 3 at 600 tomorrow. Welcome to the Liberation Forces, recruit. As Tarek left the office, he found Lara waiting for him. She'd already received her assignment to the medical corps. Her knowledge of various species' physiology too valuable to waste. Did they accept you? She asked. He nodded, showing her the approval. You know, we could have gone to Earth, she said softly. Started new lives there, away from all this. Tarek looked out a nearby viewport, where a planet that had once been a Crawl fortress world now flew the flags of 3 liberated species. We will, he promised. Someday. But first, there are others waiting. Others who still believe no one is coming for them. His hand found hers. I want to be the one who proves them wrong. Above them, on the ship's main viewport, a message flashed briefly, a transmission being broadcast on all frequencies, in all languages, to every corner of the galaxy. To all those enslaved, forgotten, and abandoned, Earth remembers. Earth returns, and we are coming for you. They had mocked humanity's weakness until Earth's fury lit the stars.